Trades are flying around the NFL. The Chiefs could be involved in some as well, but they'll definitely be affected by everything that goes on here as we lead up to the free agency period. We're going to get into it all today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back. It's Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Network. Glad that you guys could join us. Thanks for making us your first listen. Your second listen would be a pretty good one if you went over to Locked On NFL Draft and check that out. I'm Ryan Tracy, your founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, the home of the Athletic Matrix, as well as RGR Football, and the host over at the LOND Show.
And I'm Chris Clark. I am the founder of Chiefs Corner, and I'm going to be extremely busy over the next couple of weeks when it comes to free agency and breaking down cap numbers and how it's going to affect Kansas City with the new signings that they're about to have in the coming week.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. There's going to be signings. There'll be some free agent, I think, friction. We'll see. But it all starts with trades because that's the thing right now that is on the table. So there's all kinds of theories. There's all kinds of concepts. And it's been going all over the NFL. A lot of quarterback trades in particular. We're going to get into that here in a coming segment. But what that means is all this motion for quarterbacks around the league leaves a few options out there on the table. And I think the most intriguing one to me is the notion that it's a fire sale in Seattle. Obviously, we'll talk about Russ Wilson here in a bit in the second segment, but it does leave the question, A, what do you think of the Bobby Wagner release? And does that fit any kind of plan for the Kansas City Chiefs? I've gotten a ton of questions about that. And then B, what do you think about trying to go wrestle and see if there's any kind of fire sale for DK Metcalf out of Seattle?
I don't know that you're going to be able to get DK Metcalf out of Seattle. I've heard that Tyler Lockett could be available, but that's a different ballgame. So, I do think that Kansas City could be looking at doing some trades, whether or not those will materialize or not. I would imagine that if they're going to do trades soon, it's going to be before the new league year kicks off, which is basically going to be Monday afternoon. So that's going to be something to watch because that is when free agency kind of starts with the tampering period.
Yeah, the quote unquote. I think that's definitely something that could go. And I think there's a couple of guys who will now be free agents that I thought maybe the Chiefs would have to pursue in a trade. I don't think a trade is huge in the cards, but I do think there's something to be said, whether it's Lockett or DK, that you could get somebody out of there that could actually fill a bit of a role. Obviously, Lockett's going to be a lot cheaper if you were to pursue that. Chandler Jones looks like he's not going to be a member of the Cardinals. You don't have to go trade for him. He will be a free agent. And that's a guy that piques my interest behind, obviously, Von Miller, who is hinting that he's going to return to Denver. But not having to trade for a veteran, I think, makes a lot more sense because then it's just market value, and I think you end up getting them cheaper. Do you have interest in pursuing either a Bobby Wagner or a Chandler Jones now that they are free agents?
I think you could look at doing deals with both of those guys, but, man, it's going to be very hard. You're getting a lot older at both those positions if you're going to go that direction, which is okay. At the end, if you're going to bring in a guy like Chandler Jones, if he's going to be your main answer for how you're going to replace Frank Clark, which I think is still coming. But the big question is, Bobby Wagner, is that going to be a piece that's really going to fit into this roster? And yes, he fits that veteran mold, but is he going to be wanting a top-tier contract? Because I don't think he's worth that. I think he's a very good player still, but I don't think he is where he was a couple of years ago.
Well, and whether he is or not, I don't think it much matters. I think for the Chiefs, they can't afford to pay a starter salary to a linebacker. They have their starters. They need to keep that position cheap. An inexpensive veteran backup to be a mentor? Sure, I'm all for that. I personally don't think Bobby Wagner's in the offing because I don't think that you can bring him in after his career to this point and leave him a backup behind Nick Bolton. And I'm not willing to do anything that removes Nick Bolton and Willie Gay from the field in terms of a personnel move. So I would say negative on that one.
Yep. No, and I agree with you. And
now, Jones,
just really quick, Chiefs are down another $570,000 in cap space, so now they're at just about negative $6,000 before the new league year kicks off. Still don't have word that they've done anything with Patrick Mahomes' contract, so that's something that we're waiting on as well.
Yeah, and all these things should be dropping. If you missed our show the other day, like, sub, hit the bell on YouTube so you don't miss any more. And you can go check that one out because it is kind of a domino order. We've seen the two big ones happen. Now we're expecting something with Frank Clark and something with Patrick. I think Patrick first, but, I've thought things before, so I'm not going to say that that's actually going to happen. But there are other things going on around the league. One that affects the Chiefs in their division. We'll talk about that coming up later. But a couple of other things that I think are actually making the AFC what has been a juggernaut of these younger quarterbacks. It's making them a little bit easier to deal with because you're moving some guys out of here. I didn't bet that this was going to happen, but if I had, I would have taken the props over at BetOnline and checked them out all the way. Just like I will for the basketball tournament. March Madness is coming up very, very quickly. We're going to get into that as well. And if you want all the information that you need to put your money out there on the line in a smart way, go check out the number one source for all of your needs and info. That's pods and shows and stats and the whole 9 yards. You get everything over there, particularly right now for basketball. It's your continued sports source for everything that you need to lay those bets down. Head over to the website and check them out. It's super easy to navigate, and it's brand new over on mobile as well. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, most interesting news to me is that another veteran quarterback moved out of the AFC. Mm-hmm. So I can't say it's a 1-for-1 with Wilson coming in, but Carson Wentz moving out and going to the NFC East. I think it's very intriguing and unfortunate for Chris Ballard. This has been a move that has not worked out, but it does recognize that in the wake of moving him out, I think they got two threes or 2 threes for it?
2 threes.
2 threes after giving up 2 1s to get him, right?
Yep. Yeah, but they're getting a lot more
football.
They're getting a lot more back than I ever would have expected. And they're getting rid of $28 million in cap space.
That's the big thing. I didn't predict this scenario to really affect the Chiefs in any way because I thought the cap was going to be the big thing that kept the Colts from really taking a step forward. But now, with the Commanders taking on that portion or the entirety of the salary, that frees up the Colts to go get a veteran, whether that is Garoppolo that were immediately rumored there, or they could even get in the Deshaun Watson thing. I have no idea. There's always
I can't see him going in.
He is here a team that I can't either, but you never know.
Yeah.
If the whole garden is soured, you do what you can to move on. I don't know, but at the end of the day, this is a team that I think outside of the quarterback play was in a position to be a playoff team, and obviously that's a big frustration for them to not be. But if they get the right quarterback, I can definitely see them getting back close to it. But that's a thin line. If they end up having to draft a quarterback, which is the other likely outcome, I can't see the Colts being competitive enough for the next couple of seasons to really affect the Chiefs in any way in the playoffs.
Even if they go get a guy like Jimmy G, how's that going to affect things? I can't see that being a huge deal that's going to put the Colts in contention because Jimmy G is an okay quarterback, but you saw unless he has a super defense like he's had with the 49ers for the past couple of years, that's going to be a big question mark. And the other side of it is who are the Colts weapons going to be? T.Y. Hilton's there, but he's getting older. They've got some younger wide receivers that are okay, but they just lost one of their tight ends to retirement. Now, he wasn't a huge player for them, but it's still one of their players. So their main weapon right now is a running back. And while that's okay, you still need more if you're going to have Jimmy G be as successful as he could be in Indianapolis.
The other thing that I will tell you is that all this quarterback movement, even Russ coming into the West, we'll talk about him in a minute. I think that sets it up well for the Chiefs because that takes quarterbacks that are possible now to go higher in the draft than maybe they would have and knock some defenders down to Kansas City at 30. I think it also opens up some trade aspects for draft picks. The Broncos are in position now that they're not going to take a quarterback at 9. They should not. They would not. If they didn't take Justin Fields, now they have Russ. There's absolutely no reason. Will they stay there? Possibly. But if not, they're likely to trade out for someone who does want to come get a quarterback, knocking another defender down towards the Chiefs. Do they get all the way down there? Obviously, that's a long way to fall. But it opens up the possibilities for Indianapolis and for Denver to swap out and allow more defenders to get down to where the Chiefs need to pick. Maybe the Chiefs even trade up with one of them. I would think the Colts is way more likely in order to go get somebody that they do want. Do you see that happening after all this quarterback rigmarole here?
Well, Kansas City could make a move, and they could be trying to move up. I wouldn't be shocked if they do that. The question is are they going to be able to find somebody that really wants to move down all the way to 30? And what are they going to have to give up to get up there? That's the big question that you have to answer. And until we know that, it's going to be very hard to determine whether or not they can move up.
Yeah, it's going to be a challenge, that's for sure. I know one team that probably is unlikely to ever do a deal with Kansas City again, and that's the Buffalo Bills. Thanks for that selection of Patrick Mahomes. We appreciate that. But it, again, all revolves around the quarterbacks. So I think the key for Brett Veach now is planning out who he can go to and say, hey, if you get your QB, we could do this, we could do that. I'd take this. I can offer you my extra third. I think that's probably the biggest bargaining chip right now. But I actually think the movement of the quarterbacks opens up the possibilities for the Chiefs to actually do a little bit more minutes than I thought they would 2 days ago.
Well, and I'm really curious to see what they do, because you also look at how the franchise tags have played out and all the wide receivers that have been getting tagged and tight ends that are getting tagged. I'm not saying Kansas City was in the tight end market, but that still affects who's going to be available overall.
Mm-hmm. And I think it becomes more of a possibility that if you were to make some kind of trade, it would be for a lower level, like backup type tight end.
Mm-hmm.
I know everybody out there in Chiefs Kingdom feels that they're set because everybody wants to see Jody Fortson get back to where he was, and they just made the draft selection of Noah Gray. That makes sense. But they did carry 4 on the active roster at times last season. So I can't say that 3 guys has this roster set at the tight end spot.
Yeah, no, but I agree with you. And the big question is the fourth guy was Blake Bell, who fits a completely different profile than the other 2 that they either drafted or that is Fortson. So it's going to be curious to see what direction they go from there. And they really still don't have a guy that can step in and kind of take Travis's spot. Yes, I know those are huge shoes to fill, but he is a different type of player than anybody else on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nearly impossible to actually replace him. You just have to try and do something akin to get yardage production. This doesn't have to be, the huge chunk plays. It doesn't have to be touchdowns, but I do think it has to be the ability to turn over the downs and get first and get some yardage out of your backup tight end.
Yep. And it's got to be somebody that's going to get into their route running and be where they're supposed to be at all times and have good enough hands to bring in the ball when it's thrown to them, because they're not going to get many opportunities.
Yeah. And being where you're supposed to be is something that they're going to have to do quite a bit, because now, especially on the defensive side, they're going to have to go against another elite top 10 quarterback in this division. We're going to talk about Russ Wilson in Denver and what that means for the Chiefs defense coming up next. And that's really what it is. The reaction for Russ Wilson getting here, hey, kudos to George Payton. He gave up a ton. He handicapped himself for the next couple of seasons, which tells me a couple of things. That they feel great about their weapons. They feel that Russ was the cap on top of their project, and that they feel they can bolster their offensive line enough with lower level draft picks and free agent signings to try to compete. So with that said, with Russell Wilson being in the division now, what does that do for you? Does that change anything in terms of your priorities or your targets for the defensive side of the Chiefs?
I'm not sure that it really does, because to me, you still had Justin Herbert in this division. And Russell Wilson still may be the 3rd best QB in this division. I mean, it's really hard for me to say he's, you could make an argument he's number 2. I don't think he beats Patrick Mahomes, though. So to me, I think that it's, at best, he's the 2nd best quarterback in the division. So, okay. But is he that much better than Justin Herbert if you're going to make that argument? I don't think so. So is it going to really change based on just that? I mean, maybe a little, because you have 2 more games that are going to be a little bit more difficult than they have been in the past. But Denver's defense isn't going to be as good either. They lost one of their best defensive tackles. They don't have Von Miller anymore. They have questions and things that they're going to have to be filling. Yeah, right now they don't have Von Miller. And question whether or not he would actually come back. I think he could, especially with Russell Wilson there, but they've got to figure out all the money and all that. So I still think Von Miller is going to end up being a Ram again, but that's my own personal thought on it. But their defense isn't going to be as good. And yes, they still have the pieces, but unless their defensive coordinator is able to step in and have as good of a defense as what they had last year with Fangio, it's going to take a step back, I would think.
Yeah,
They have pieces
that's
to
fair.
step forward, but Kansas City, I think you're looking at this, you have to go figure that you're going to need to score more points, and I think that's going to change their priority and what they need to do offensively, not defensively.
Well, and I guess that's fair, but that's kind of been baked into the scenario the whole time, right?
Right.
They knew they needed to put up more points. For me, it tells me that they have confidence. They let Deshaun Hamilton go yesterday, the Broncos did. So they have confidence in their top 3 wide receivers, which tells me that the Chiefs need to be a little bit more aware of how that they're going to defend those guys.
Yeah.
They've done fairly well the last couple of seasons. The departure of Ward, I think, is going to be important there.
Yeah, but we already said that they needed a corner. So to me, I guess it doesn't really change that much. I would still like to see them bring back Ward. We already figured they're going to lose Tyrann Mathieu. So I guess to me, in my mind, we figured that those were going to be cases anyway. Yes, Denver is going to be a harder offense to defend because you have a very good quarterback that can now hit 3 good wide receivers. That's going to change things a little bit. But I still think that the defense was going to be something they were going to have to work on regardless.
Yeah. I mean, even before the return of Mike Williams in Los Angeles, which, by the way, congratulations, Los Angeles, giving him $20 million was more than even I thought you would do. And that is a mistake, just to put it plainly. But I will say this, even with his return, I do think that the Broncos, in terms of their top 3 wide receivers, I think are a better group than the Chargers have. So that's why I draw that comparison. The thing that it changes for me is I think Russ, more so than Herbert, is able to escape pockets, make plays with his feet, and still to deliver the ball when flush from the pocket. So that, for me, changes the immediacy of the type of pass rusher they have to go get. I know Spags is going to stick with his power edge that collapses the pocket and waits for something to happen. You do that with Russ, I think you're going to be in a much worse position than you were a year ago. So that brings me back to a little bit more of at least having backups, like relief guys that you can run NASCAR with or something, that have that speed element to their pass rush that can get to Russ a little bit quicker than that.
Yeah, but I don't think that changes what you're going to do in free agency that much because you're probably not going to go out and you're probably not going to go out and sign defensive ends. That's going to be the most expensive position that you could probably go out and sign other than QB, and obviously Kansas City's not going to have to do that. So to me, I think that you're going to be looking at getting those guys in the draft as much as you can and trying to add and supplement maybe later in the offseason once the draft is passed, when the big thing that I would be watching for Kansas City to make trades, and we kind of talked about this earlier, is right after the draft when veterans are getting replaced by draft picks.
Yep. And that is bound to happen. Whether the volume or the quality will be there is what I will question, because I feel they have to go out and get an edge in free agency, whether it's, I don't think it can be first wave because of the money, like you said, but they have to do it. I don't think they can rely on multiple draft picks to get it done along with Josh Kano and Mike Dana and call that an edge group.
No, and I agree. I guess I'm saying they're not going to go out and spend $20 million a year. Unless a guy like Zadarius Smith comes available, and then I don't know what they're going to pay him. I could see them going out and doing something like that. I don't know that they should, but I could see it happening.
Yeah. I personally don't think he's worth that money, but we've seen them do something a little bit crazier than that. I really think, unfortunately, that Melvin's going to drag out his decision. So you're not going to get him back in any time, shape, or manner that gives you the advantage to feel set until, I'm guessing, right up before camp.
Right. So with Mahomes, you have $17 million that you would basically have in cap space if he got converted right now. So with that $17 million, you could go make a couple of moves. If Tyreek Hill gets re-signed, you could make a couple of more. I'm looking for that to get done, hopefully before free agency. And I would think that the Mike Williams deal should be able to push that in the right direction. But that kind of opens up cap space for you to be able to go make some of these signings. And you could go make, it doesn't have to be top tier guys, but if you're going to be paying in the first couple of days of free agency, you're going to be paying close to top tier money for that position. So maybe you fill out some of your positions that you're going to need help at, wide receiver too, if you think that there's somebody there that you can go get. I still think it's going to be a 1-year rental, but if you're doing a 1-year rental, you're probably going to need to pay at least $5 million. So that really limits what else you can do.
Yeah, that's fair. And they will have draft options. We're going to talk about some of the options tomorrow, both positionally and player fit wise, for our Friday show. I'd like to know what you guys think. What's the number one move these Chiefs should make now that the quarterback carousel has gotten off to a running start. Leave us your comments on YouTube. That's the easiest way to get us comments, but you can also leave us iTunes reviews and we can get some feedback that way. We'd like to know your opinion. Leave that there, like, sub, and hit the bell on the YouTube side. And we are free on all the other audio platforms as always. Thanks for taking the time with us today. We'll be back with you tomorrow and give you an update on whoever else gets traded today.